First up tonight, the breaking news. In fact, it's heartbreaking news for anyone who counts on the Gulf Coast for a living or simply loves the natural beauty of it. It is murder for the animals that call it home. The first fingers of the massive oil spill off the coast of Louisiana approaching land tonight, just a few miles offshore. According to late word from the four-agency federal task force that's handling this emergency, the slick is enormous, 120 miles wide. The winds blowing out of the southeast, pushing it ever closer to the shore, and some of the numbers are simply staggering. The doomed well is leaking from 3 points underwater. Take a look here, dumping 210,000 gallons of oil a day into the Gulf. That's amazing. Making things even worse, there's no indication that crews can cap the flow anytime soon, perhaps not for weeks or months. This spill is already America's second worst environmental disaster on record after the 1990 Exxon Valdez spill. At the rate it's going, it could be on track to be the worst. Tracking the spill, joining us now, Chad Myers in the CNN Weather Center. Chad, we've been talking about this the last couple nights now. What are you hearing tonight? Well, today it became a weather story, and now it's an environmental story because of the way the winds shifted. They're out of the southeast now. It's blowing all of that oil, basically sludge right now, the kind of tar balls originally, because that's the oldest oil. It has broken down, lost a lot of its volatility, and now tar balls coming on shore. Although shore is a relative term down there, the bayous and the ditches. There's the oil slick itself. So what's going to happen for the next couple days? By tomorrow, that slick, including the initial surge of tar and oil and almost mayonnaise consistency oil, will be coming all the way up into the bayou. And then by Saturday into Sunday, it continues to move. See, there's today, and then it moves a little bit farther to the north and to the west, and then tomorrow it again moves a little bit farther to the north and to the west. That's all because of the wind. By Saturday, it's up to Biloxi. By Sunday, it could be Mobile. And by Monday, it could be into Pensacola. And you said, this is no end in sight to this. The water is still mixing in. The wind is still blowing it right to shore. And we are still seeing up to 210,000 new gallons of oil in the water every day. They can't go in there and cap it off. I mean, it literally keeps coming out. You know, yesterday we were talking about the fact that they burn oil off, yes. You know, a slow burn. But they didn't do that today. Why not? They didn't do it today because the wind was too strong. Yesterday it was perfect conditions. They lassoed it all up. They corralled the oil. They made it deeper and thicker. They lit it on fire, and it made smoke. I understand it makes smoke, and that's a point of pollution as well. But it is not as bad for the environment, nor the waterfowl or the animals and everything living in that water for the smoke to be bad compared to the oil getting on the feathers birds, getting into the plankton. The plankton are eaten by everything else, and all of a sudden you have a food chain disaster, and that's what's happening right there on the southeast coast of Louisiana. Already lawsuits being filed against BP by some of the fishermen in the southeastern part of Louisiana because they know their livelihood is over. And, you know, things may have been happening throughout the hour today, Chad. We'll keep checking back with you if they do. And with that oil fast approaching, countless people, from experts to volunteers, are scrambling to try and minimize the damage to wetlands and wildlife, as Chad was just talking about. Meantime, oil engineers and others are racing to try and stop the flow. It's a huge challenge, and nothing has worked so far. Up close with the latest, Tom Foreman joins me.
Hey, Sanjay, the technical challenges here really are absolutely massive. I'm going to move inside here and show you underneath the water what you're looking at. This was explained to me by some experts today at LSU. I'm going to put it in really simple terms. You have 3 pipes leaking down there, but let's imagine just one of these. What you have here is a pipe of less than a foot in diameter or so, spewing oil under enormous pressure. A massive device down here called a blowout preventer, 450 tons, 50 feet high, should have automatically shut this down, but it did not. BP has been trying to fix it with robots, but no luck yet. So what do you do now? Well, one of the possibilities that BP is preparing for is to lower an undersea collection device. For simplicity, just think of this as a huge inverted funnel. And this is way oversimplified, but it gives you an idea. And it would capture this oil as it's loose in here before it spreads out and then pump it up to a barge. This has been done before, but never at such a depth. So the military could be crucial with their involvement because they have deep diving subs to help run this operation. That could take about 4 weeks. But that's not bad compared to the other alternative. BP is also moving another drilling rig into position to drill right down into that broken well to establish a new line. But that would take even longer, Sanjay, and that's also very tough. It's no sure thing.
Earlier, Tom, the clock is ticking right now. I mean, how much danger is there to the Gulf itself while they sort this out?
Well, you know, Sanjay, this is in the middle of one of the world's most productive fisheries. More than 1 billion pounds of fish and shellfish are harvested here annually. Researchers at Louisiana State tell me that the big fish species, if we think about those, they may be okay for the moment, the grouper, that sort of thing, because they're largely below the oil and they can swim, at least for the moment. They can get away from it. But since oil rises to the surface, we move on to the next group of animals. They're the ones who are really in immediate danger right now. Dolphins, porpoises, turtles, and seabirds, for example, they really may have nowhere to go right now, Sanjay, and the oil is upon them.
And that's, I mean, you're talking about right now, but, you know, maybe within the next few hours even, Tom, this thing could hit shore. What happens then? It could be quite forceful.
That's a really good point, because that's where it gets much, much, much more complex. We're going to widen out here and talk about some of the area Chad was. Here's Biloxi over here, here's New Orleans up in here, and the Louisiana coast, all the way over to Texas here. This area is called the Fertile Fisheries Crescent. Some of those LSU researchers I was talking about earlier today, they told me the marshes all down in here are absolutely critical to the success of the entire region down here, because this is where many critters, from shrimp to crab and many fish species, start their life cycle. And in fact, some of the younger juvenile ones have to live here. So enough oil in this area could be disastrous, because this really is a nursery for the entire Gulf. On top of that, millions of shorebirds are nesting here right now, including the state bird, the brown pelican. Plus, this is a prime migration route for around 500 million other birds that we see all over the country. They're coming through here right now. Plus, one more thing. See how this all winds around in here? You see all these little areas? What that means is you don't have a straight shoreline of 200, 300 miles. What you actually have in Louisiana down here are thousands of miles. And as long as the oil keeps flowing, each time you clean up one of these areas, it can be recontaminated again within hours, Sanjay.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, it's tough to think about. We remember those terrible pictures from just over 20 years ago, the Exxon Valdez, and Tom, as you've been hearing, I mean, ultimately, within the next few weeks, maybe month, it could be as bad, if not worse than that. Is it going to have sort of the same impact as we saw then?
It could. It's a different type of oil, but it absolutely could. I want to show you a comparison. We've been looking at this area down here. If we fly up here to Alaska, we're sort of sweeping up the west coast here, and we go to Prince William Sound where this happened. You can see it's a more enclosed area, and here's a critical difference as we look at the pictures of what happened up in here. This was absolutely awful, but here's an advantage they had in Alaska. This was a finite amount of oil in one tanker that came out at once, and they were able to address it and deal with it. Some studies there in just recent years show they still have pockets of oil up there from this spill more than 20 years ago, but at least they knew what they were dealing with. The point that these researchers I spoke to today stressed over and over again is, as long as the oil is flowing down here in the Gulf, this will simply keep growing and growing and growing, and they have no idea where the end will be. Sanjay?
All right, Tom, thanks so much. We're going to be tracking this, obviously, throughout the hour and the night.